Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of our podcast, Musicality, a show where we dive into the lives of composers. I'm your host, Joycelyn.
And I'm Sarah.
And today we're going to be discussing the scandalous, emphasis on scandalous life of Claude Debussy and all of his honeys.
I wrote that earlier. Before we get started, we'd like to provide a quick trigger warning. This podcast contains mature themes, including thoughts of suicide. It is crucial to approach this content with an open mind, respect for boundaries, and an understanding of consent. Thank you for your understanding, and we hope that you find value, education, and respectful insights within the episodes of this podcast. As usual, all of our sources can be found on our website at MusicaliTeapodcast.com if you want to fact check or learn more information. Achille Claude Debussy was born in August of 1862. He had a turbulent youth, and he lived with his parents in an impoverished suburb in Paris. He had little formal education as a child, but his talents were developed in pianoforte lessons with Madame Malte de Fleurville. Did I pronounce that right?
Girl, I hate French. I don't know. I have such beef with the French language, okay? It sounded right to me.
We'll keep it. Okay.
Keep that.
While at the Paris Conservatory, Debussy had a reputation as an, quote, erratic pianist and a recalcitrant in matters of harmony and theory.
That's all the bio y'all need, because there's so much stuff that happens for the rest of his life, and I just literally could not believe my mind. So let's jump into the tea, shall we? So I would just like to preface this episode by saying city boys have existed since the beginning of time, okay? That's all I have to say about that. So here we are. Young Claude is 18 years old, and he began an affair with a married woman, Marie Blanche Vanier. I hate French. So, like, I said that wrong. Please don't come for me. There's so many unnecessary words in the French language. Like, I simply cannot get my mouth to form the proper shape. I'm not trying to be a Parisian person that knows French. I don't know French. So
that's fair.
But I'm going to try my best. So Marie Blanche Vanier was an amateur soprano who was married to a Parisian civil servant, Henry Vanier. And Debussy started an affair with her when he was 18. And Debussy, they met because he was employed as an accompanist for her vocal lessons, and she was schooling him in the art of love.
No, you need to chill out.
I'm sorry. So, given this substantial age difference, the 8-year affair also involved a significant maternal element. Marie Blanche guided him in his choice of clothing and instructed him just basically in the ways of the world. Like, you had this little young Claude, fresh out of schoolboy life, and this older woman helping him out through the world, And all of that aside, she also guided him into the world of literature and inspired a substantial number of love songs. Debussy wrote in some of his dedications to Madame Vanier, these melodies conceived in a way by your memory can only belong to you, as the author belongs to you.
What a player! What a player!
Another note read, to Madame Vanier, those songs that have never lived only by her and that will lose their graceful charm if they never pass through your melodious fairy mouth.
Not the fairy mouth.
Debussy had that riz.
Because, like, that is so poetic.
Like, there's a lot of quotes that I'm going to read you guys throughout this episode, and I ain't even going to lie. Like, the riz.
Well, and just so that we're clear, she's only the first woman that is like necessarily recorded. We have got like 4 other women to talk about throughout this entire episode. So she's just the beginning. Like, oh my God. I literally made a list and I was like, key players.
Yeah, we have a diagram available on the website if you guys need. And I would actually take out pen and paper just so you can keep up with all of this, because it's going to get really jumbled really fast. So that was the first. We're like starting off with a bang right at 18 with an affair with a married woman. But moving on, after this original affair, he started an very, very unhealthy relationship with Gabrielle Dupont, which was filled with conflict. Now, Dupont, or Gabby, she was in dress. I'm sorry.
No, a lot of these women did have nicknames too, which I started wondering. I was like, were these common nicknames at the time, or were these nicknames that he gave them?
I don't know.
That were
like all of them had nicknames, so I'm not
Mhm.
sure.
It's like
Anywho.
Blanche, Cookie Bear, Vanier.
Cookie Bear, Choo Choo. We're gonna talk about Choo Choo later.
So it's gonna be so much editing.
Now, Gabby, she was the daughter of a tailor, and the most remarkable thing about her, quote, was her pretty blonde appearance and the striking green color of her eyes. This is also a quote, okay? Her chin was forceful, she was strongly built, and looked at you as resolutely as a cat. What does that even mean?
Right. Catwoman.
What does that mean? But anyways, Gabby became a muse for some of Debussy's greatest works. Quote, to Mademoiselle Gabrielle Dupont reads the dedication of the first act of his unfinished opera, Rodrigue et Chimène.
Debussy's relationship with Gabby was also characterized by some major financial struggles. While he frequented the literary and artistic cafes of the city, hobnobbing with the bohemian avant-garde. Oh, I thought that sentence kept going. I was confused.
No,
sorry.
no, these are okay, you can do some of the quotes. Let me do this part because I know how I wanted to read it.
Okay.
I
was like,
now, okay. Yeah, I know. It's confusing. I got it. So Debussy's relationship with Gabby was characterized by some major financial struggles. In fact, Gabby provided emotional support and took care of the household. They lived in this shabby apartment, and Gabby was the sole breadwinner. Meanwhile, Debussy, he frequented the literary side, and he was in artistic cafes. And I'm not saying money is everything, but it was equally poor on his end. So yeah, Gabby basically provided for the couple, and she apparently worked as a dancer, and she tried to look the other way when Debussy engaged in one of his numerous indiscretions. But one indiscretion she just could not ignore, and that was his affair with the singer and pianist Thérèse Roger. And Gabby became aware of this relationship by finding a compromising letter.
In the letter, Debussy wrote, Gabby, with her steely eyes, found a letter in my pocket, which left no doubt as to the advanced state of a love affair with all the romantic trappings to move the most hardened heart. Whereupon tears, drama, a real revolver, and a report in the Petit Journal.
Honestly, a lot of these letters got Debussy in trouble. But to address what Sarah just read in that quote, Gabby did point a revolver at herself, but she seemed to miss when she shot it, thankfully. But in the meantime, Claude and Thérèse happily performed at a Brussels concert. And although he was living with Gabby, he proposed to Thérèse. Marriage. He proposed. So.
He wrote, I am quite free, my last girlfriend having gone one February morning. I am sick of this man. I can't.
I can't. And it gets worse. Like, that's like, we're
only like at,
we're like
this is woman number
halfway.
2.
Like, oh my gosh. So the wedding to Thérèse was supposed to take place on the 16th of April of that year, and the couple was to settle on scratch all of that, sorry. So the wedding to Thérèse was to take place in April, but the report that we mentioned in the Petit Journal put an end to Debussy's shenanigans. Ernest, who was the guy providing financial support to Debussy, he was livid about this situation. And it also did not help that Debussy was trying to extract 1,500 francs on him on such short notice, basically to pay for his stuff because he was poor and all he did was sit in cafes all day. So the engagement to Thérèse was broken, and Debussy returned to the arms of Gabby to continue that crazy relationship. You got next.
Actually, speaking of that with Ernest, I was reading one of the websites that we did take a few of the like key points that we have is from interlude.hk. Mm-hmm. And there was another article about Debussy and his circle of friends because he was like connected to different composers at the time.
Right.
And it was mentioning how like there was one composer, I would have to double check, but there was one who essentially cut off Debussy because he didn't like his scandalous lifestyle. He thought that he was like just too dramatic. His life was too full of gossip. I was like,
yeah, I could see that, honestly. Like, yeah.
I feel like if cancel culture existed in the 1900s,
Debussy, I'm sorry. Well, they kind of did cancel him. We'll talk about later. Like, he kind of did get canceled a little bit. But yeah, so Debussy goes back to Gabby, but eventually Gabby does realize that life with him is not healthy or beneficial in any way, shape, or form. Thank you, Gabby, for finally realizing that. So she left him for a count. Period. And Debussy connected with Gabby's friend, Rosalie Texture. I don't know how to say her last name, but she was
woman number
Lily.
3.
Yeah, she was known as Lily or Lilo. So
Lilo and Stitch. I'll say Lily. Lilo, I keep thinking of Lilo and Stitch. I'm gonna say Lily.
We're gonna call her Lily.
Lily worked as a model and was a stock market player. Stock market player?
Yeah, she played in the stock market because she had money because she was a model. Right. Mind you, Debussy was poor. I just want to point that out one more time. I swear I don't care about money, guys. I just want to draw parallels. Let's just put ourselves in this time period, okay? That's all I'm saying. But Debussy was poor because he was a composer. I just need to mention that. Okay. But he wrote her a letter that said, quote, "If you were very nice, you would put on your pink petticoat and your black hat and come say hello to me next Sunday around 2:30 a.m. and we would talk and plan a few parties with George. Signed, your devoted Claude Debussy," and then wrote his address out. "There is no elevator." That was in the letter as well. "There's no elevator. If you can't, I'll cry. And send me a note." This man basically, like, this is a glorified, over romanticized version of a text that's like, "You up?" 2:30 in the morning, 2:30 a.m.
You up? No, like,
gosh,
I just can't.
So Lily and Debussy actually ended up getting married, mainly because Debussy's bestie at the time, Pierre Louis, a writer of erotic symbolist tales, got married as well. So I feel like there was a little pressure there because, you know, his friend is settling down. He's like, maybe I should settle down. But let's talk about the letters that led up to their engagement, okay? And I just want to mention before we get into those letters, like, y'all know when someone is like super over the top and it just feels like they're hiding something, like it's essentially love bombing. That's Debussy. Okay. That is him. Okay. The next part.
All right. On May 24th, Debussy wrote, "If you only knew how full of you everything is here. There isn't a corner, not a piece of furniture that isn't marked with your delightful presence. It's like 1,000 little voices buzzing in my ears in such strange and touching whispers, where your sweet name of Lily keeps coming back like a fine and delicate music." He continues, "Truly, I love you without hesitation. Nothing prevents me from giving myself up completely to this force that is carrying me away. Have you felt this wonderful light that surrounds us when we have to separate and our eyes seem to get stuck?"
And then, and I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of cute. Like, I feel like I would eat this poetry up. See, that's what makes me so upset.
No,
because
what gets me is what gets me is the second part when he's like, "No, really, I do love you. Like, I'm not lying."
No,
like really, like,
he had a way with his words. That's all I have to say. On June 2nd, he writes, "Today, as I am writing to you, I can barely hold my pen. It is all me who would like to run to you, to have your lips faster, your eyes quicker. For nothing I would open my veins so that my blood would flow and sing the joy of your return. Don't find it too absurd. Think that you don't know what to say to calm down the unbridled passion in me." Moving on. Like, that's all lovely, but we know how Debussy is, so we know better, okay?
Right, like, don't get too caught up in it.
In another letter later in June, when he returned to Paris, this is where things kind of start to get a little confusing, and we could see maybe the love bombing probably was a thing. He says, "quote You can rightly say that you were cheated on once." It's like, hold up. Um, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Imagine getting these letters that's like, oh my God, I love you. I can't even hold my pen because I'm so in love with you. By the way, you were cheated on one
Well, and it's
time.
like by the time he writes the letter and mails it, it's like maybe a week. And so
Yeah.
you get it, and you're like, what?
Then this man says, quote, thinking about it, if it's not too much to pay with my life for all this lost happiness, and it's still a way of giving it to you, I'll pack all your belongings, which will be given to you the day after tomorrow morning. I naturally keep my ring, wanting to be buried with it. Please welcome my last and longest kiss, one of the one who was your Claude. I will wait for a word from you until tonight. And if I can no longer hope for anything, just tell me that you forgive me. Your pride may well sacrifice someone who is going to die. So that's like after he confessed to his cheating, I guess. Like he's like, oh, I'm gonna keep my ring because I love you or whatever. But
But you might have been cheated
I'll
on,
wait and see what
so.
you have to say first. But I'm prepared to die.
But then he goes like kind of back to normal. Master manipulator.
Literally.
He says, before I see you again, and especially not to talk about it anymore, I want to tell you that I have never suffered like this last night. You see, the thought of losing you was associated in me with the thought of the death of everything. I beg you, never fear anything of my love. It is too much made of the blood of my veins and the infinite hope of my heart. Think that I put more than my life in you, that nothing can replace Lily. These letters are so emo. Like
I can't. And she was just wrapped around his little finger.
can't.
I know she was. Oh my gosh. He had to weigh his words, I must say. I think part of it helped that they didn't see each other every day because he was in Paris working as a composer. But whew,
Hmm.
Lord, the whiplash I'm getting is like, whoa.
Then eventually he makes up his mind the next day. In July 5th letter, he writes, I want you to be my little one forever, and that for every day. Then the wedding happens in October of 1899, and Pierre was there, and my bestie, Sati.
Sarah's bestie was at this man's wedding. We love Sati though.
Yes, Sati.
Yeah, so we link all these letters on the website. So like I really want you guys to go and read because we did take like excerpts from them, but it's just like it's a complete spiral. Like please go read these letters. It's better than any romance book you'll probably read that was released in the last 10 years, I promise. So now after they got married, it was a civil wedding, civil marriage. To pay for dinner, this man had to go teach a piano lesson that day. Okay, that same day. Like they got married and he's like, I have to go teach a lesson to get money to pay for dinner. And the
Grind
student
never
who
stops.
so the student describes the scene in a letter. She says, quote, Lilo Debussy was waiting at the bottom of the stairs of our apartment, sitting on the bench for the lesson to be over, in order to go on the honeymoon trip with her husband on the top of the Imperial Omnibus. To continue the quote, they ended up in the garden of plants where the poor groom who hated walking dragged himself. The feast was paid for with the price of my lesson, and everyone walked back, for alas, there was not enough money to take the omnibus. Yeah. Anyways, like I just can't. Like this man, first of all, you knew you were getting married and you didn't even have enough money for dinner.
Mm.
You literally got married and had to be like, oh, let me go teach this lesson so I can pay for dinner. And we still don't have enough money to take the omnibus. Like,
Not the omnibus.
oh,
So Lily was sick with tuberculosis and kidney stones, but he was given advance from his employer to support the couple. Then they went to Paris, but Lily didn't really like it, but she did encourage him to stay. And he sends her to Bichon.
Bachon, I don't know. It's French. You know
Mhm.
how I want to say by chain, but that's not right. Bichain.
Right.
That's where he
He sends her
sent
to
her.
Bichon. And then he justifies his behavior by saying, I am seriously in the wrong for not explaining myself enough. A frequent mania among people who are forced to think a lot, and often what you took for indifference was only a, quote, teddy bear, melancholy so hard to shake. He's gaslighting. That's all that is.
It is gaslighting because
It's
then
gaslighting.
he literally says, quote, she was a very spoiled little girl who does not like to have her will or whim discussed. He makes a comment of cheap philosophy, quote, you see, my poor darling, an artist is a detestable interior man and perhaps also a deplorable husband. Moreover, by turning the question around, a perfect husband often produces a pitiful artist. It's a vicious circle.
Mm,
I mean, he was self-aware. Was he saying it in a gaslighting way? Yeah. But
absolutely.
that's about the truest thing he done said. Like he
Then
but he
you
just
justify himself.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
You got it.
He continues to justify himself by saying, so you live in that big house whose portrait you had the gracious thought of sending me. How many happy days it contains. That is so evil, actually.
Like if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can't see my face, but literally, like I'm so done. Like I'm so done.
And like there's more.
I know we aimed and there's literally more. So he was writing Lemaire during this time and hoping it was going to make him some big bucks. He was banking on a lot from this piece. He said, quote, tell my textures, who is Lily's family, that I'm not proud of being able to make them mad, but I'll make up for it. Kiss them for me. They know I love them. Then he writes a letter breaking up with her, and the divorce was final in 1905. This man said, quote, I'm going to London with J.E. Blanche, who kindly offers me the trip and the stay. Now, forgive me for what follows. Perhaps I would have done better to tell you during my trip to Bashan, whatever. I could not find the time, nor perhaps the courage to tell you. First of all, let me tell you that I have the greatest possible tenderness for you. And it only makes it more painful for me to say what I believe is fair to say to you today. I have a very clear conviction after these days spent away from you, when I was able for the first time to reflect coldly on our life, that while having loved you so much, I had never made you as happy as I should. I remembered those annoying moments when you asked me to give back your freedom. Why do I have to agree with you today? We are no longer children, so let's try to get out of this story quietly and without getting people involved. I could no longer work as I wanted with that annoying worry of not knowing where I was going for all the material things. I leave it up to you to settle them at your convenience. Whatever you ask me to do will be fine. It's obvious that this letter will hurt you, if I judge by what it cost me to write. But why spoil something that was beautiful and could perhaps have been even more beautiful for longer? The last thing I will ask is that you be careful to keep the memory of it without mixing in the narrow and ridiculous opinions of people who have never known how to love or devote themselves. If you understand me, you will forgive me for having done you a little harm, and you will believe that I remain tenderly devoted to you. The end. Moment of silence for Rosalie, please. Like,
Ooh.
poor woman.
Well, and just for a little bit of context, we haven't gotten to the fourth woman yet. But at the time that these letters are being sent, he is shacking up with Emma Barnett.
Yeah, it's overlap. There's some overlap here.
Lots of overlap. So reading these letters is like especially harsh.
Especially because we have the full story, you know. It's like
we know the full scoop.
I really hate this for dear Rosalie. I really do. She tried to commit suicide. She shot herself with a revolver, and the bullet was in her stomach, which settled in like the mass vertebrae area. I'm not an anatomy person, but it was like in her vertebrae basically. But she did have a successful operation, thankfully.
Claude had to pay Lily a pension of 400 francs per month, plus a life annuity. These sums were only paid until 1910, and a sentence for non-payment amounting to 30,000 francs was pronounced in 1916, 2 years before Debussy's death. And he left for woman number 5.
Yeah, so when he divorced Rosalie, that's the overlap to this next woman,
Mm-hmm.
Emma Bardock. I don't know how to say her last name, but her name's Emma.
Yeah, Brian. She was married to a Parisian banker at the time and was also a love interest of Foray. But
Foray! Sorry.
your bestie.
That's not my
I love
bestie, but I do love his flute music.
it.
So
Sorry. Yeah.
Fantasy was like
Floki's
one
your
of the first solos I ever learned ever. Fantasy by Foray.
I read so okay, so Emma Bardak was the mother of one of Debussy's pupils. Her son Raoul was a student of Debussy.
Yeah.
And so it was so the summer of 1904, roughly around the time that Debussy is like writing these really mean breakup texts. It's like when he's shacking up with Emma. And then the divorce wasn't finalized until 1905.
Yeah, so Debussy took Emma on a little vacay, and his illegitimate child with Emma was born in 1905. And guess what her name was Claude Emma.
Emma. We already kind of like covered that he's like a master manipulator, but narcissist is definitely up there too. Because
Imagine me naming my child Joycelyn, whoever their father's name is. Like,
yeah,
imagine.
it's it's the fact that Claude's name came first.
I mean, I guess because he was
Wasn't
like the father is like a
Emma,
patriarchy.
Emma
I don't know.
Cloud? But like you couldn't have at least given her
Emma
Emma.
Claude.
It had to be
Claude
Cloud.
could be a girl's name.
It can, but with Claude Emma, it's just like so clunky. And then the nickname's Choo
Yeah.
Choo.
Yeah, they nickname her Choo Choo.
That's the meme part, I feel like.
Choo Choo. Or because it's French, is it Show Show?
Choo Choo.
I crack myself up. Okay. Now, they were surrounded by gossip because of this, and Debussy went to live in Eastbourne on the south side of England. South side.
South.
South side? You think they
South
did that?
side.
And do they do that in Britain? Like, is that a thing? Living on the
South
south
side?
side?
I don't know.
But the real reason he left is because people alienated him because he y'all supposed to be because I don't mean because sorry. But they alienated him because of his behaviors that were not very nice.
And then Emma and Debussy got married in 1908, and they stayed together until he died in 1918. In 1915, Debussy underwent a colostomy, which was still a relatively new operation at the time. It was said that it provided temporary relief, but caused him a lot of frustration, where he said, quote, "There are mornings when the effort of dressing seems like one of the 12 labors of Hercules." That's a little dramatic to me, but anyway. I mean, I guess if you're in pain, that's.
I guess he was in pain, but you know what? I mean, he
He caused so much pain
did a
this
lot.
entire time.
I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but like maybe he could have had a little discomfort. I don't know.
We can cut that out. I need to fix myself.
So
Anyways.
his health continued to decline, and he gave his final concert on September 14th, 1917, and became bedridden in early 1918. So he died during World War I, actually, at the age of 55 in 1918. And because it was World War I, the military did not permit the honor of a public funeral with the ceremonious graveside orations. So the funeral processional made its way through the deserted streets to a temporary grave as German guns bombarded the city. And then later, Debussy's body was reinterred in a smaller cemetery where fulfilling his wish to rest, quote, among the trees and the birds. His wife and the daughter are buried with him as well. Do you want to mention what happened to Choo Choo?
She died at 13 of diphtheria.
Yeah, so 1 year after Debussy died, she also died because a doctor gave her the wrong medication, is what happened. Yeah, very sad. Mm-hmm. Very sad. Rest in peace.
Justice for Choo Choo.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Justice for Choo Choo. The least problematic one in this entire episode.
Only a child. I hate that. Segue now into the music of Debussy. I'm sorry, that was so awkward. You know I can't handle.
It was like, how do you start
segue out of that? I don't know.
Like,
Yeah, so let's get into the music of Debussy. And one of my favorite things I super love about musicology as a whole is just that learning what happened in composers' lives literally directly correlates to the pieces that were written. And with Debussy, I think like his over the top nature is so apparent in his music. And that's why I really be eating it up. I really do. And I hate it. I hate it. But like, yeah. So
Mm.
Debussy is often seen as the first impressionist composer, even though he hated that term. But either way, he was definitely one of the most influential composers in the late 19th and 20th centuries. A brief definition of impressionism is music that focuses on mood and atmosphere, conveying emotions rather than a tonal picture.
Do you want to talk about your favorite pieces first?
I
Or
guess I should. I'm in order. Go in order. So my favorite piece by Debussy. So I have two kind of, but my favorite one is La Mer or Nocturnes for the symphonic works, and then I like his Preludes Book One as well for piano works. But I'm gonna talk about La Mer because I I'm just like I have like a personal anecdote with La Mer. So when I came into high school, I did marching band, and the closer for our show theme was La Mer because the title of the marching band show was From the Mountains to the Sea. So it was
oh,
really
that's
cool.
cute.
That was like my first introduction into, I mean, I listened to classical music, but that's like when I really, I think, started to
Mhm.
really like listen to it, like put it on my playlist. So La Mer was one of
Yeah.
the first pieces I ever listened to that was like going on the playlist.
Mhm.
So Debussy described La Mer, which translates to the sea, which was published in 1905, described as three symphonic sketches for orchestra. This was the piece he was working on while he was with Lily that he was hoping would have a lot of good response. Um,
Mhm.
but it was described as three symphonic sketches for orchestra. And I'm not even going to say the French translation, but three symphonic sketches is it? And it wasn't well received at first. It was not. So he was banking on a lot and he did not get that. Okay. And one of the reasons probably was at the Paris premiere, there was probably a lot of public disapproval of Debussy's treatment of his wife Rosalie. So he kind of did get canceled in a way. One of the critics wrote Louis Schneider, whatever. He wrote, quote, the audience seemed rather disappointed. They expected the ocean, something big and colossal, but they were served instead with some agitated water in a saucer. That
That's
quote, it's in my
oh.
lexicon of music invective, which is like, oh,
That sounded like a big
I
smack.
definitely just like threw the book on the floor. My bad. But this is a book, Lexicon of Musical Invective, which my theory teacher told me about in college. But you can just look up, there's a whole bunch of composers in here, and it's just bad critic reviews of their works. So I love
Oh,
reading them. If you ever need a pick me up, let me tell you, like, imagine writing a bad review of like Beethoven or something like
yeah.
Beethoven's ninth, and you're writing a terrible review about how it'll never withstand the test of time. It's
Right.
like the most written thing ever.
Like,
So that's
well.
this. Um, some points were made, I will say though. So agitated water in a saucer. That is hilarious. But when he went to the United States and Britain, they ate it up. They loved it. And the first audio recording was in 1928. And a lot of people drew analogies between Lemaire and French impressionistic paintings, but Debussy didn't like that because he was not impressionism. He did not do that. Okay. But yeah, so and then my other work, the Preludes Book One, it's just a I want to say compilations, but it's a collection of 12 piano works. So yeah. And it's really beautiful. Like it's just like music that I want to listen to as I like run through a field and lay and have no worries in the world and eat like strawberries or something. Like it's just beautiful music, I will say.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about the first arabesque, but I erased it because I had so much to say about the Rhapsody. I
Okay.
feel
But you
like
can mention you
um,
like first arabesque, yeah.
I really like the first arabesque.
It's
But oh, we were
beautiful.
talking.
It's beautiful.
It is. When you were talking about like your first encounter with Debussy, and like mine was, I think, I mean, I had like listened to Debussy like in high school, but it wasn't like until college that I got to play Debussy, and it was like a wind band arrangement of the Engulf Cathedral. But that was like, I think my first semester of like freshman year, and I played Barry sax for that one. And it was just, oh my gosh, it was just so gorgeous because it was like a literal transcription. Like everything was the exact same.
Mhm.
It was just for wind band. That's where I really loved ABC's music.
It's beautiful music.
Emphasis on music
Yeah,
because
music.
I'm rethinking so much. But anyway, the piece that I wanted to talk about was Rhapsody for alto saxophone and orchestra, which I had definitely listened to this piece before. I've heard of it, never gotten to play it. But I didn't realize just how much beef like swirled around this piece, because I always thought it was like very cool that Debussy did write a piece for saxophone. And then the more I read, it was like it basically almost didn't happen because he just didn't like saxophone that much. The piece was originally commissioned in 1903 by Elise Hall, who, if you're a saxophonist and you don't know Elise Hall, you have to look her up. She's one of the first prominent female saxophonists, which is such a huge deal, especially for that time. And there wasn't a lot of French repertoire, and she wanted more pieces for saxophone, as the instrument was still developing at the time too. And so she approached Debussy because she admired his music, and he was like, "Oh, okay, maybe." And then it went like years where he just didn't write it. And Elise Hall was like a huge performer. Like she was traveling like all over the world to do these performances of pieces that she would commission. And Debussy saw a performance that she gave of another commission, and he wrote to a fellow composer. Let me double check his name. Oh, it was Andre Messager. And then he wrote to Andre Messager, quote, "The Americans are proverbially tenacious. The saxophone lady has arrived and is inquiring about her piece. Of course, I have assured her that it is the only subject that occupies my thoughts. So here I am, searching desperately for novel combinations calculated to show off this aquatic instrument."
I cannot.
It was the fact that he called her saxophone lady that I was like,
It's him writing this down. Like he was just so blatantly, openly disrespectful.
yes,
Saxophone lady.
yes,
What is a call?
yes.
What does an aquatic instrument even mean? Don't you
I
need
guess
money,
it was
WC? Write the piece. Like
like a way of like saying it was weird. I don't know. The performance that he saw her give, it was in 1905, which is, as we know, around the time he was divorcing Lily, trying to get up with Emma. So I'm like, he just had a lot of other things on his mind.
definitely, he was
But
very much preoccupied.
But after he saw the performance, he wrote that he thought it was ridiculous to see a woman in a pink frock playing such an ungainly instrument, and he didn't want to, quote, perpetuate the spectacle. So all I know is that Debussy and I wouldn't have jived. We wouldn't have been in the same circle. But I will say Rhapsody is quite beautiful. It didn't get finished really until okay, so finally, after it had been several years, Elise Hall did approach Debussy again, and she's like, "Yo, where's my piece?" And he's like, "Oh, finally, okay, fine, I'll write it." And he gives her like 3 or 4 staves, and then he dies. And so it was
3 or 4
finished
staves
by
with like 30 seconds of music. Like, be so for real. Oh
and like
God.
the saxophone literally doesn't play until like the 28-second mark or something. Like it takes a while before the saxophone comes in.
Of him. Oh my God.
But Jean-Roger Ducasse was the one who finished the piece, so bless it up for him, because Debussy could not count on him for that.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful piece. It's really a beautiful piece. It really showcases, I think, the technical abilities of the early saxophone. By today's standards, the piece would seem quite simple to be a concerto, but in terms of, like showcasing what the instrument could do at that time, which was like pretty limited, the saxophone really couldn't do a whole lot technically until like mid 1950s when like more keys were added and the instrument was just a lot like more improved by that point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you definitely have to keep in
beautiful
mind the
piece.
saxophone is like one of the newest instruments and it has progressed so quickly. So,
In such a short amount of time.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool
anyway.
piece. Terrible story surrounding it, but shout out to people like Alice who persevered. So, yeah.
Elise?
Oh, shoot. Elise.
I was like, it's
Let's edit that out. Alice. Elise, my bad.
You're like, yeah, they're important.
Says the wrong name. Oh my god.
It's
My
like, thanks
bad.
for that, Alice.
It wasn't in the slide, okay?
It's fine. It's so close.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. Oh, one more piece though we need to mention is
Yes.
Le Petit Noir, which translates to the little black or the little. So this piece was described as a cakewalk. And just a brief definition of what a cakewalk is. The cakewalk was a pre-Civil War dance originally performed by enslaved people on plantation grounds. The uniquely American dance was first known as, quote, a prize walk, and the prize was an elaborately decorated cake. Hence, prize walk is the original source for phrases like takes the cake and cakewalk, stuff like that. So, plantation owners served as judges for these contests, and the slave owners might not have fully caught on that the enslaved people might have just been mocking them during these highly elaborate dances, but it became a staple in American culture and was really popular in minstrel shows. And the reason I wanted to mention this is like Debussy was in France, but similar to other composers, like a lot of people drew on American influences in their music, especially later in the time period. Like America really started to become put on the map, music wise, as having its own style. And unfortunately, that style was like minstrelsy, but yeah, that's history. And this piece, Le Petit Noir, was commissioned. It was a commissioned work, and it was reminiscent of the Gollywog Cakewalk from his Children's Corner, which was composed a year before this one and was really written for Choo Choo. So
yes,
I can't say Choo Choo without laughing.
Choo Choo
Or Show. Somebody let me know. It's CHOU. CHOU. Shosho.
Maybe like shoo shoo.
Shoo. Maybe. I don't know. But
no, I don't know that it's like.
It's probably not chew. I don't know.
Choo choo.
But
Emma
Claude. Claude Emma.
Or Cloud Emma.
Claude Emma.
No.
But he alluded to banjo chords and drums, which were very common in American minstrel shows. So I just wanted to mention that piece because, when you talk about these composers like Debussy, these heavy hitters who have lots and lots of pieces, like had some really beautiful music, has some music that today we definitely wouldn't want to, or I will say want to listen to just because of cultural implications and how they might be offensive, but it's important to still talk about it and the pieces can still be performed. I'm not saying that's not the case, but just know the history. Right. So Debussy was writing cakewalk music. I just want to say that. Okay, moving on. Right.
Well, especially when like pieces like that, because it's like a similar thing with Granger, like that we talked about in the first episode of like pieces that are inspired by children and like the innocence of childhood. And so it kind of plays into that nostalgic feel a little bit, which is why I think it's like, and we talked about this before with like American folk songs and like the actual origins of where those tunes come from. And it really plays into that nostalgia for the listener. But then when you really look at the origins of either the tune or melody, it's pretty terrible. And it's good to know those things, not only as like programming wise as a conductor, but also as a performer.
Yep. Could not have said it better myself.
We hope you learned a lot from this episode, and we hope that you look at Debussy's music in a new light. Maybe don't hang around people like that.
No. And guys, listen to your friends, just really evaluate situations because that wasn't it. I'm sorry. Like, oh man, that was not it. That I have choice words for Debussy, honestly. Because like
Look, I mean,
originally we were gonna call the episode Debussy was a city boy, but I was like, no, there's another term for him that I won't say. But he was a little worse than a city boy, I would say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Literally all week when we were talking about Debussy, the only way that like anytime I would read his name, I kept thinking about literally the clip from Twilight when Edward's like Debussy, and then that was it. Like all
Literally,
week,
though.
and so like this whole episode, I'm like reading, and I'm like Debussy,
Debussy, Debussy.
and
I
then
know the
and then
clip
he's
you're talking
playing
about.
like yeah, because the Edwards he's literally playing like Claire de Lune, and then Bella's like, oh, you like music? Like the really like it was so underground, and he's like, oh yeah, I love Debussy.
Love the Twilight movies, man. It's so cringy. I love it.
She's like,
Perfect.
yeah, he's really good.
Wow. He's really
Anyway.
good.
He's really good.
Really good. Gotta go
Like
behind
Camp
the back.
Rock.
And then she's literally just like
She does the like.
and then she's like
That's what pulled all 5 of those women.
oh
BBC did that.
not right there. Those
He's like, want me to
with the
play a piece?
moves. But you know, I gotta say, the man had a way with his words. I must admit, like reading that is quite swoon worthy when it's like lovey and romantic. But boy, did he flip the switch on you. He flipped the switch really quickly. So yeah. That's Debussy.
Yeah. Should we talk about the next episode? What are we doing for the next episode?
I don't
It's
know.
Beethoven,
what is the
right?
next episode? Yeah,
Beethoven?
Beethoven and coffee. I think it's the next episode.
Yeah, so for next time, be sure to tune in where we talk about Beethoven, the barista. I just came up with that. He wasn't a barista. No, I was looking up, I was like thinking of, I was looking at alliteration. He wasn't a barista, but he loved coffee. So
he was serious about that coffee. So we'll talk about that. Yeah.
It's gonna be a good episode.
I'm very excited, and that is all. So we hope y'all have a good rest of your life till the next time we see you. All right.
Bye.
Bye.